The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, crystal exploding like Lydia Laurent's carefully constructed life. She didn't remember dropping it. One moment, she'd been standing in the ballroom of the Castellan Foundation Gala, surrounded by Manhattan's elite in their $1,000 gowns and practiced smiles. The next, her husband's voice was echoing through the sound system, and the room had gone silent except for the ringing in her ears. "My wife and I have decided to embrace a more modern approach to marriage," Ethan Carmichael announced from the stage, his perfect smile never wavering. "We believe in transparency and honesty, which is why we're opening our marriage to new experiences and connections." Lydia felt every eye in the room turn toward her. The heat of their stares, their curiosity, their pity. Ethan hadn't told her, hadn't asked, hadn't even warned her that he was about to announce to 500 of New York's most influential people that their marriage was a lie. She ran. The rain hit her like a wall the moment she pushed through the hotel's gilded doors. Her silver gown, the one Ethan had chosen because it photographed well, clung to her skin. She couldn't breathe. The corset he'd insisted she wear, the heels that made her calves scream, the smile she'd worn all night, all of it was suffocating her. Lydia didn't see the man until she collided with him. Strong hands caught her arms, steadying her before she could fall. "Easy," a voice said, low and measured. "Are you hurt?" She looked up into the face of a stranger. Korean features, sharp jawline, dark eyes that assessed her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable, but somehow didn't. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, and he didn't look at her the way the men inside had, like she was a spectacle. He looked at her like she was a person in distress. "I'm fine," she lied, trying to pull away. Her voice cracked on the second word. He didn't let go immediately. "You're crying in the rain outside a gala in a dress that costs more than most people's rent. You're not fine." His voice carried a hint of something, not quite an accent, but the careful diction of someone who'd learned to code switch between worlds. "Do you need a car?" "I need to disappear," Lydia said, and then she was crying in earnest. 5 years of holding everything together finally breaking apart on a rainy Manhattan street in front of a complete stranger. He pulled out his phone with one hand, still steadying her with the other. "I can make that happen," he said simply. Within 2 minutes, a black car pulled up to the curb. He opened the door for her. "No strings, no expectations, just a ride wherever you need to go." Lydia should have said no, should have called her mother or a friend or literally anyone she knew. But everyone she knew had been inside that ballroom, watching her humiliation. This stranger, whoever he was, had seen her break down, and hadn't looked away in embarrassment or laughed or pulled out his phone to record it. She got in the car. He slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Where to?" "Brooklyn," she heard herself say. "Fort Greene, my mother's house." He nodded to the driver, then turned his attention back to her. "I'm Min-jun, Kang Min-jun, and before you worry, I'm not a serial killer or a stalker. I own the security firm that handles the Castellan Foundation's events. I was leaving when you came through the doors." "Lydia?" she said because it seemed rude not to. "Laurent?" Recognition flickered across his face. "The wife." She flinched. "I guess everyone heard." "Everyone heard," he confirmed, but his tone wasn't cruel. "For what it's worth, the room turned on him about 30 seconds after you left." His co-host ended the speech early. It was a spectacular disaster. Lydia didn't know whether to laugh or cry harder. She did both. 5 years, she said to the rain-streaked window. 5 years I gave up everything for him. My career, my friends, my life, and he couldn't even tell me first. Min-jun said nothing for a moment, just let her words hang in the air. Then quietly, "What did you do before you gave it up?" "I was an architect," Lydia said, and saying it out loud hurt worse than Ethan's announcement. "I designed buildings. I created spaces where people could live and work and exist. I was good at it." "Was?" Min-jun asked. "Was. I don't know anymore." Lydia turned to look at him. this stranger who'd caught her when she fell. "Why are you being nice to me?" His expression shifted, something dark passing behind his eyes. "I had a sister. She was in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. By the time anyone realized it wasn't, it was too late." He paused. "She died 3 years ago." "I'm sorry," Lydia said, meaning it. "I am too." Min-jun pulled a card from his jacket pocket, held it out to her. "If you need anything, a lawyer, a security system, information, a job recommendation, someone to listen, anything, call me." Lydia took the card. It was simple, expensive paper with just a name and a phone number. No company name, no title. Just Kang Min-jun and 10 digits that felt like a lifeline. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." "Because someone should have helped my sister, and no one did." The car was pulling up to a brownstone in Fort Greene, the lights on in the front window. "Because you ran out of that gala and the first thing you did was try to hold yourself together. Not call a lawyer, not call the press, not make a scene. You just wanted to disappear. That tells me you're not interested in drama. You're interested in survival." The driver opened her door. Rain poured down, washing the carefully applied makeup from Lydia's face. She looked at the card in her hand, then back at Min-jun. "What do you really do? Security firms don't just offer to help random crying women with lawyers and jobs." He smiled, and it wasn't quite nice. "I solve problems, sometimes legally, sometimes in the gray areas. Your husband's company has been on my radar for 6 months. He's leveraging deals he shouldn't be able to leverage, making moves that don't add up. I'd like to know how." He leaned back in his seat. "But that's business. This," he gestured at the card, "this is personal. Use it or don't. Your choice." Lydia stepped out into the rain, turned back. "What if I want both? What if I want help, and I want him to pay for what he did?" Min-jun's smile widened. "Then definitely call me. I'm very good at making people pay." If you're already hooked by Lydia's story of revenge and redemption, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you'd do in her situation. And trust me, you'll want to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. The door closed, and the car pulled away, leaving Lydia standing in the rain outside her mother's house with nothing but a ruined dress, a broken marriage, and a business card that felt like a loaded gun. She looked up at the lit window where her mother waited, unaware of what had happened. Lydia had left for the gala as Mrs. Ethan Carmichael, the perfect venture capitalist's wife, the woman who smiled and stayed quiet and made him look good. She was coming back as something else entirely. Lydia climbed the steps and rang the doorbell, still holding Min-jun's card like a talisman. The door opened, and Lorraine Laurent stood there in her bathrobe, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her face went from confusion to alarm in a heartbeat. "Baby, what happened?" Lydia walked past her mother into the familiar warmth of the brownstone where she'd grown up, tracking water across the hardwood floors she'd played on as a child. The house smelled like her mother's lavender candles and the remnants of dinner. Normal. Everything here was normal, and Lydia was bringing chaos through the door. "Ethan announced at the gala that we have an open marriage," she said flatly. "In front of everyone. Without telling me first." Lorraine's hand went to her mouth. Then she closed the door, locked it, and pulled Lydia into a fierce hug that smelled like cocoa butter and safety. "That bastard?" Lydia laughed wetly against her mother's shoulder. "I think that's the first time I've ever heard you curse about him." "I've been cursing about him in my head for 5 years, baby. I was just waiting for you to see it." Lorraine pulled back, cupped Lydia's face in her hands. "You're staying here tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." But Lydia couldn't sleep. She stood in her childhood bedroom at 3 in the morning, staring at Min-jun's card. The man was offering her something dangerous, revenge dressed up as help, wrapped in the promise of making Ethan pay. She should throw the card away, should call a regular lawyer in the morning, file for divorce like a normal person, take the high road her mother would recommend. Instead, she picked up her phone and sent a text to the number on the card. "This is Lydia Laurent. You said to call if I needed anything. I need information on my husband, and I need to know what it would cost." The reply came within 60 seconds, despite the late hour. Lunch tomorrow, 1 p.m. I'll send a car, come alone, and it won't cost you money. Lydia stared at that last line. If he didn't want money, what did he want? She was about to text back when another message came through. Get some sleep, Lydia. Tomorrow we talk about what you really want. Revenge or justice. They're not the same thing. She did sleep finally, and dreamed of buildings she'd never gotten to design and a life she'd given up for a man who'd humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. The car arrived at 12:30. Not a hired service but a private vehicle with a driver who introduced himself as Mr. Park and treated her with respectful efficiency. They drove to Koreatown, to a building that looked like standard Manhattan commercial real estate from the outside. The elevator required a keycard. Min-jun's office was nothing like Ethan's ostentatious corner suite with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art that cost more than most people's houses. This space was minimalist. Clean lines, dark wood, comfortable chairs. The art on the walls was actually interesting. Mixed media pieces that looked Korean in origin, bold and unconventional. Min-jun stood when she entered, gesturing to a table set for two by the window. You came. You said you could give me information. Lydia sat down, accepting the tea he poured with steady hands. I want to know everything about my husband that I don't know. And then I want to know what you meant when you said it wouldn't cost money. Direct, I like that. Min-jun sat across from her. Your husband, Ethan Carmichael, runs Carmichael Ventures. On paper, he's brilliant. 15% returns, never a losing quarter investor, darling. In reality, he's been cooking his books for 18 months. He's leveraging insider information from 3 different sources, and I want to know who they are. Lydia felt cold. You think I know? I think you lived with him for 5 years, and you're an architect, which means you're trained to see patterns and structures. I think you might have seen things you didn't realize were significant. Min-jun leaned forward. But that's the business part. The personal part is that your husband is also a liar in ways that go beyond financial fraud. He slid a folder across the table. Lydia opened it with shaking hands. Medical records. Ethan's medical records. And there, highlighted in yellow, was a diagnosis from 4 years ago. Severe oligospermia. Functionally infertile without medical intervention. I don't understand, Lydia whispered. But she did. She understood perfectly. He told me I was the problem. He made me go through testing, treatments, told me my body was broken. He lied. Min-jun's voice was gentle but firm. Your medical records show normal fertility. His show the opposite. He's been lying to you for years about something fundamental to your identity and self-worth. Lydia closed the folder because if she kept looking at it, she was going to be sick. 5 years. 5 years of feeling defective, of apologizing for her body's supposed failures, of watching Ethan's disappointment every month when she got her period. 5 years of him sighing and saying maybe next month, while knowing the entire time that he was the reason they couldn't conceive. Why would he do that? Her voice broke. Why not just tell the truth? Because the truth would make him look weak. Min-jun refilled her tea, giving her time to process. Ethan Carmichael's entire identity is built on being perfect. Perfect background, perfect education, perfect career. Infertility doesn't fit that image. But a wife who can't give him children? That's sympathetic. That makes him the long-suffering husband standing by his broken wife. Lydia wanted to throw the tea across the room, wanted to scream. Instead, she took a breath and asked, What do you want from me? I want you to be seen publicly with me for 3 months, Min-jun said. I want Ethan to watch you move on, be happy, be valued. I want his investors to see his personal life as a disaster and start asking questions about his professional life. And in exchange, I'll give you everything you need to destroy him, legally, financially, professionally. That's it? Just be seen with you? That's it. No expectations beyond public appearances. You keep your autonomy, your choices, your dignity. I'm not Ethan. I'm not interested in controlling you. Min-jun's expression was serious. But I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. My world isn't clean. The people I associate with aren't all legitimate businessmen. If you do this, you're stepping into gray areas that might make you uncomfortable. Lydia thought about the gala, about Ethan's smile as he'd announced their open marriage to a room full of people who'd watched her run away in tears. Thought about 5 years of being told her body was wrong, her worth was conditional, her dreams didn't matter. Thought about the medical records in the folder and the casual cruelty of a man who'd built his marriage on lies. I want to do it, she said, but I have conditions. Min-jun smiled. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. I want access to all the information you find about Ethan. No filtering, no protecting me from the truth. I want help getting back into architecture. Real help, not just a pity job from one of your contacts. And I want to know exactly what kind of gray areas we're talking about before I agree to anything. Fair. Min-jun pulled out a contract, slid it across the table. Everything we discuss is in here. You have 24 hours to review it with a lawyer of your choosing. My business. Partner Layla Khoury will answer any questions you have. She's former federal prosecutor, now she works with me. She'll tell you exactly what I do and what risks you're taking. Lydia picked up the contract. It was surprisingly straightforward. 3 months of public appearances, compensation for her time, clearly defined boundaries, an exit clause she could invoke at any point. You've done this before. Never like this, Min-jun admitted, but I believe in clear terms. Misunderstandings lead to resentment, and I don't want that between us. Between us, Lydia repeated. You talk like we're partners. If you sign that contract, we will be. Not romantic partners, partners in taking down a man who deserves it. Min-jun stood, offering his hand. Think about it. Talk to Layla. Talk to your mother. And if you decide this isn't for you, I'll still help you find a good divorce lawyer and walk away. No hard feelings. Lydia shook his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. This was a man who'd built something from nothing, who operated in shadows, who looked at her and saw someone worth investing in. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first honest interaction she'd had in years. I'll call you tomorrow, she said. I'll be waiting. Layla Khoury met Lydia at a coffee shop in the West Village the next morning. She was in her early 40s, Lebanese-American, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put Lydia at ease. This wasn't someone who would sugarcoat anything. Min-jun sent me your contract, Layla said, ordering them both coffee without asking what Lydia wanted. Let me tell you what he won't. Kang Min-jun is brilliant, loyal to a fault, and operates in legal gray areas that would make most lawyers nervous. He's not a criminal in the traditional sense, but he's not a Boy Scout either. What does that mean exactly? Lydia asked. It means he gathers information through methods that wouldn't hold up in court. It means he has connections to people who do things that are definitely illegal, even if he keeps his own hands clean. It means if you associate with him publicly, some people will make assumptions about you that aren't fair, but are inevitable. Layla stirred her coffee. It also means he's one of the most effective people I've ever met at dismantling someone's carefully constructed lies. If you want Ethan Carmichael exposed, Min-jun can do it. But you need to be comfortable with how he'll do it. Lydia absorbed this. Have you ever seen him hurt someone? Physically, I mean. No, that's not his style. Min-jun destroys reputations, not bodies. He finds your secrets and makes sure the right people know them at the right time. Layla leaned forward. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you doing this because you want justice, or because you want revenge? What's the difference? Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. Justice has limits. Revenge doesn't. Layla's gaze was penetrating. Min-jun walks the line between the two, but he leans toward revenge. If you sign up for this, you need to know which side you're on. Lydia thought about Ethan's face as he'd made his announcement. The smug certainty that she'd never fight back, never cause a scene, never be anything but the perfect, docile wife. Thought about the medical records that proved he'd lied to her about something so fundamental. Thought about 5 years of her life she'd never get back. I want both, she said finally. I want him to face consequences, and I want him to know what it feels like to be humiliated in front of everyone who matters to him. Layla smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then you and Min-jun will get along just fine. Sign the contract. But remember, You can walk away any time. Don't let anyone, including Min-jun, make you feel like you owe him anything beyond what's written in that agreement. Lydia signed the contract that afternoon. Within an hour, Min-jun texted her. First appearance is tomorrow night. Gallery opening in Chelsea. I'll send details and a stylist. Wear whatever makes you feel powerful. The stylist arrived at Lorraine's house the next morning with 3 racks of clothing. Lydia expected something provocative, something designed to make Ethan jealous. Instead, the woman pulled out a tailored black jumpsuit with clean lines and architectural details paired with bold gold jewelry. Min-jun said you're an architect, the stylist explained. He said you should look like yourself, not like you're trying to be someone else. Lydia stared at the outfit. When was the last time she'd worn something she actually liked? Ethan had always chosen her clothes. Soft colors, feminine cuts, nothing that drew too much attention. This was bold, confident, unapologetically striking. It's perfect, she said. Drop a comment below if you think Lydia should go through with Min-jun's plan, and don't forget to hit subscribe. This story is about to get a whole lot more complicated. That night, Min-jun's car picked her up at 8. He was waiting in the back seat wearing a dark suit that somehow made him look even more dangerous than he had in the rain. His eyes swept over her outfit, and he nodded approvingly. You look like someone who designs buildings. That was the idea, Lydia said, surprised by how much his approval mattered. Where are we going? A gallery opening. New contemporary artist. Very trendy. Ethan will be there. He's on the host committee. But more importantly, about 200 of Manhattan's art and business elite will be there. Min-jun's smile was calculating. We're going to walk in together, and you're going to look happy. Can you do that? I can do that, Lydia said. And she meant it. The gallery was packed when they arrived. Min-jun's hand settled on the small of her back, proprietary, but not aggressive. They moved through the crowd, and Lydia saw people's eyes widen, saw them whisper to each other. She recognized faces from Ethan's world, investors, socialites, people who'd been at the gala. Lydia, a familiar voice said, and she turned to see James Rutherford, her old mentor from architecture school. He looked stunned. I didn't know you were back in the scene. I'm just getting back, Lydia said, and she heard the strength in her own voice. James, this is Min-jun Kang. Min-jun, James Rutherford. He taught me everything I know about sustainable design. They shook hands, and James's expression was curious but not judging. You disappeared after you got married. I always wondered what happened to that community center proposal you were working on. It's still just a proposal, Lydia admitted, feeling a pang. I never finished it. You should, James said firmly. We need good architects, Lydia. We especially need architects who give a damn about communities, not just profit margins. He pulled out his card. Call me. I'm working on a project in Bed-Stuy that could use your perspective. After he walked away, Min-jun leaned close to her ear. See, you're not just Ethan's discarded wife. You're Lydia Laurent, architect. Don't forget that. She didn't have time to respond because Ethan was suddenly there, Nina Chen clinging to his arm. Nina was beautiful in an obvious way. Designer everything, perfect makeup, the kind of woman who looked like she belonged on Ethan's arm. Lydia, Ethan said, his smile tight. I'm surprised to see you here. Why? Lydia asked coolly. I've always loved contemporary art. You know that. His eyes slid to Min-jun, and something dangerous flickered in them. I don't believe we've met. Kang Min-jun, Min-jun said, not offering his hand. Lydia and I are seeing each other. The words hung in the air. Lydia watched Ethan's face go through a series of micro-expressions, surprise, anger, disbelief, and finally, something that looked like possessive fury. That was fast, Ethan said, his voice dripping with disdain. The divorce isn't even filed yet. Neither is the open marriage finalized, Lydia shot back, feeling a surge of power at the shock on his face. Or did you forget that announcement you made? Because I certainly haven't. Nina's grip on Ethan's arm tightened, and Lydia realized the other woman was uncomfortable. Good. Let her see what kind of man she was dealing with. We should talk, Ethan said, reaching for Lydia's arm. Privately. Min-jun stepped between them, smooth and effortless. The lady doesn't want to talk to you. I'd suggest you respect that. And I'd suggest you mind your own business, Ethan snapped. This is between me and my wife. Ex-wife, Lydia corrected, and the word felt like freedom. Soon to be anyway, and Min-jun's right. I don't want to talk to you, Ethan. I don't want anything to do with you. She turned and walked away, Min-jun beside her, leaving Ethan standing in the middle of the gallery looking like someone had slapped him. People were staring, whispering. The great Ethan Carmichael, publicly rejected by the wife he'd humiliated. That felt good, Lydia said once they were outside, breathing in the cool night air. It's just the beginning, Min-jun promised. By the time we're done, he won't know what hit him. They stood on the sidewalk, and Lydia realized she was shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the rush of finally fighting back. Thank you, she said to Min-jun, for catching me when I fell, for this, for seeing me as more than just a victim. You were never just a victim, Min-jun said quietly. You were someone who needed a way out. I just opened the door. You're the one walking through it. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Min-jun was strategic about their public appearances, never too frequent, never too obvious, but always calculated to cause maximum impact. A dinner at a restaurant Ethan frequented, a charity auction where half of Ethan's investors were present, a private art viewing where Lydia reconnected with 3 former colleagues from her architecture days. Each time, Lydia felt more like herself and less like the woman who'd fled that gala in tears. Min-jun kept his promise. Their interactions in public looked intimate and exclusive, but in private he maintained perfect professional distance. He asked her opinion on business decisions, introduced her to his network as an architect first and his companion second, treated her like an equal partner in their arrangement. But she was also learning about the darker side of his world. These are my associates, Min-jun said one evening, gesturing to 3 people in his office. Park Sun-mi handles operations. Mr. Kim oversees information acquisition. Mr. Cho manages client relations. They all need to trust that you're not a liability. Lydia met their gazes steadily. Park Sun-mi was a woman in her 30s, sharp-eyed and efficient. The 2 men looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. This was Min-jun's real world, not gallery openings and charity dinners, but these people who operated in shadows and gray areas. What exactly do you want to know? Lydia asked. Can you keep your mouth shut? Park Sun-mi asked bluntly. Because Min-jun's reputation is built on discretion. If you're going to be seen with him, we need to know you won't become a problem. I've kept my mouth shut for 5 years while my husband lied to me about everything from his fertility to his finances, Lydia said coldly. I think I can handle keeping quiet about business I'm not even involved in. Park Sun-mi smiled. I like her. It was Mr. Kim who brought the real bomb. We've been digging into Carmichael Ventures, he said, sliding a tablet across the desk. Your husband's not just cooking his books. He's running a Ponzi scheme. Small scale for now, but growing. He's about 6 months away from collapse if we do nothing. Lydia scrolled through the documents, her architect's mind recognizing the patterns even in financial data she didn't fully understand. Money flowing in, being used to pay earlier investors, actual returns far below what was promised. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. How many people will lose money when it collapses? She asked. Current investors? About 40 families. If he keeps growing, could be hundreds. Mr. Kim's expression was grim. Most of them are wealthy enough to absorb the loss, but not all. There are people who've put their retirement savings with him. Lydia felt sick. This was beyond humiliating her at a gala, beyond lying about medical issues. Ethan was actively destroying people's financial futures. What can we do? She asked. Depends on what you want, Min-jun said. We can tip off the SEC, let them investigate. It'll take months, maybe years, but eventually he'll face charges. Or we can accelerate his collapse, feed information to his biggest investors, make them pull out. He'll implode faster, but more messily. If we accelerate it, do the smaller investors have a better chance of getting their money back? Yes, Layla said, entering the office. She'd been listening from the doorway. If the SEC gets involved early, they can freeze assets, track money. If we let it collapse naturally, Ethan will have time to move money offshore, hide assets. The people who'll suffer most are the ones who can least afford it. Lydia thought about the medical records, the 5 years of lies, the public humiliation. Thought about revenge versus justice. Thought about what kind of person she wanted to be when this was over. We tip off the SEC, she said finally. Let them investigate properly, but we also make sure his investors know he's under investigation. Let them make their own decisions about whether to trust him. Min-jun studied her. That's the harder path. It's slower, less satisfying. But it's right, Lydia said firmly. I want him to pay for what he did to me. But I don't want innocent people to suffer more than they have to. That makes me just as bad as him. Park Sun-mi looked at Min-jun. You picked a good one. I know, Min-jun said, and something in his voice made Lydia look at him sharply. There was warmth there, genuine respect, maybe even the beginning of something else. It should have worried her. She'd just left one relationship, wasn't ready for another. But this felt different. This felt like being seen for who she actually was. The SEC investigation started quietly. Within a week, Ethan's biggest investor pulled $60 million from Carmichael Ventures. Within 2 weeks, 3 more had followed. Ethan was scrambling, taking meetings at odd hours, looking haggard when Lydia saw him across a room at a museum fundraiser. He's desperate, Min-jun observed, watching Ethan work the room with manic energy. He knows something's wrong but doesn't know what yet. Good, Lydia said, and meant it. If you're loving Lydia's transformation, smash that like button and comment below what you think Ethan's next move will be. And definitely subscribe because trust me, things are about to get even more intense. But that night, Ethan showed up at Lorraine's house. He was drunk, pounding on the door at 11 p.m., shouting Lydia's name. Lorraine called the police, but Lydia went to the door first. What do you want, Ethan? I want to talk to my wife, he slurred. I want you to tell me what you're doing, what you told people, why everything's falling apart. I'm not your wife anymore, Lydia said through the locked door, and I haven't done anything except leave you. If your business is falling apart, that's on you. You're with him, Ethan spat. That Korean guy, I know you're with him. Did you tell him about my business? Did you give him information? I don't know anything about your business, Ethan. You made sure of that, remember? I was just supposed to look pretty and stay quiet and pretend to be the broken wife who couldn't give you children. Lydia's voice was ice. Except I'm not broken. You are. And everyone's finally figuring that out. The police arrived then, and Ethan left with a warning about harassment. Lydia stood in her mother's doorway, shaking with rage and something that felt like grief. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the cruelty, she'd loved him once, or thought she had. And watching him fall apart should have felt more satisfying than this. Min-jun showed up 20 minutes later, summoned by Lorraine's phone call. He found Lydia sitting on the front steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her. No, Lydia said honestly. I thought I'd feel victorious, but I just feel sad. Is that stupid? No, it means you're human. Min-jun was quiet for a moment. My sister, Ji-woo, when she died I was angry. At her husband, at myself for missing the signs, at her for not asking for help. But under all that anger was just this enormous sadness. Because I'd loved her and I'd failed her, and anger was easier than grief. Is that why you do this? Lydia asked. Help people like me? Partly, also because I'm good at it and it pays well and I like the power. Min-jun's honesty was refreshing. But yes, because I couldn't help her, so I help other people instead. It doesn't fix anything, but it means her death wasn't completely meaningless. Lydia leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a moment. Thank you. For not lying about your motivations. For treating me like I can handle the truth. Always, Min-jun said. And this time when Lydia pulled back, she saw something in his eyes that went beyond their business arrangement, beyond revenge, beyond anything they'd explicitly agreed to. She should have been scared. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, nothing like the calculated public kisses they'd shared for cameras. This was real, vulnerable and honest and completely her choice. When she pulled back, Min-jun looked stunned. That wasn't in the contract, he said carefully. No, it wasn't. Lydia stood up, suddenly exhausted. I should go inside, it's late. Lydia, wait. Min-jun stood too, caught her hand. I don't want to be another man who takes advantage of you when you're vulnerable. That's not what this is supposed to be. I know, Lydia said softly. That's why I kissed you. Because you're the first man in 5 years who's treated me like I have a brain and a voice and choices that matter. And I'm not confused about what I want. I'm not ready for more than that kiss, not yet. Then that's what it'll be, Min-jun said. Until you're ready. If you're ever ready. Lydia squeezed his hand and went inside, leaving Min-jun standing on the steps looking like she'd just turned his world upside down. The next morning, James called about the Bed-Stuy project. It was a community center, exactly the kind of work Lydia had dreamed about before she'd given up her career. The budget was tight, the timeline was aggressive, but it was real. It was hers. I can't pay you what you're worth, James admitted, but I can give you creative control and a chance to remember why you became an architect in the first place. I'll take it, Lydia said without hesitation. She threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised her. Days were spent sketching, meeting with community leaders, understanding what the neighborhood needed. Nights were spent refining designs, researching materials, rediscovering the passion she'd buried under 5 years of being Ethan's perfect wife. Min-jun gave her space. They still had their scheduled public appearances, a benefit dinner, an opening night at the theater, but he didn't push for more, didn't ask about the kiss, didn't pressure her for anything beyond what they'd agreed to. You're glowing, he said one evening, watching her sketch during a car ride between events. The work suits you. I forgot how much I loved it, Lydia admitted. How much of myself I lost when I stopped. You're getting it back, Min-jun said. That's what matters. But Ethan wasn't done. The SEC investigation was progressing, investors were fleeing, and his carefully constructed empire was crumbling. And desperate men do desperate things. Lydia was leaving the construction site for the community center when a black SUV pulled up. Not Min-jun's car. Ethan stepped out, and he looked nothing like the polished venture capitalist she'd married. His suit was wrinkled, his face was haggard, and his eyes had a wild quality that made her step back. We need to talk, he said. We have nothing to talk about. Lydia pulled out her phone. I have a restraining order being filed tomorrow. You need to leave. A restraining order? Ethan laughed. But it was ugly. You're going to protect yourself from me? After what you've done? What I've done? Ethan, I left you. That's all I did. Everything else. Your business falling apart. Your investors leaving. The investigation. That's on you. That's what happens when you build your life on lies. You told him, Ethan said, moving closer. You told that Korean bastard about my business, about my deals. You're the reason everything's falling apart. I didn't know anything about your business, Lydia said, but her mind was racing. The medical records Min-jun had shown her Ethan's medical records. Had she mentioned anything about Ethan's business during those 5 years? Had she seen something, said something, that had given Min-jun the information he needed? You did, Ethan insisted. You must have. You were always there, always listening, always watching. I thought you were just being a good wife, but you were spying for him, weren't you? I was being a good wife, Lydia said, and her voice was steady even though her heart was pounding. I was being exactly what you told me to be, quiet, supportive, decorative. If you said things in front of me that you shouldn't have, that's because you didn't think I was smart enough to understand them. That's on you, not me. The truth of it hit her as she said it. She had heard things. Phone calls Ethan took in their living room, conversations with business partners over dinner, documents left on his home office desk. She'd heard them and filed them away as boring business talk because Ethan had made it clear her opinions weren't wanted, but her brain, her architect's brain that was trained to see patterns and structures, had stored all of it. And when Min-jun had asked if she'd seen anything significant, her subconscious had probably connected dots she hadn't even realized she'd been collecting. You destroyed me, Ethan said, and there were actual tears in his eyes. 5 years I gave you everything, and you destroyed me. You gave me everything? Lydia's voice rose. You took everything, Ethan. You took my career, my confidence, my sense of self. You lied to me about my fertility and made me believe my body was broken so you could hide your own inadequacies. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You controlled every aspect of my life and called it love. I loved you, Ethan said desperately. I still love you. We can fix this. Come home. Tell the SEC it was all a misunderstanding. Tell your boyfriend to back off. We can start over. No, Lydia said simply. We can't. Because I don't love you anymore, Ethan. I don't even like you. And I'm never coming back. Something shifted in Ethan's face. The desperation hardened into something uglier. You think you're so much better now? You think being with him makes you better than me? He's a criminal, Lydia. Everyone knows it. They just can't prove it. Maybe, Lydia said, but he's never lied to me. He's never made me feel small. He's never taken away my choices and called it protection. Whatever else Min-jun is, he's honest about it. Which is more than I can say for you. A car pulled up. Min-jun's car. He must have had someone watching her, keeping her safe. The thought should have bothered her, but right now it just made her feel relieved. Min-jun stepped out and his face was cold as he assessed the situation. Mr. Carmichael, I suggest you leave before I call the police. Of course you're here, Ethan sneered. Playing hero for my wife. Ex-wife, Min-jun corrected. And I'm not playing anything. Lydia can handle herself. I'm just here to make sure she doesn't have to. Ethan looked between them, and Lydia saw the moment he realized he'd truly lost. Not just his business, not just his reputation, but her. The one thing he'd been certain he could always control. You deserve each other, Ethan said finally. A criminal and a traitor. Better a traitor than a liar, Lydia said. Goodbye, Ethan. He left, and Lydia sagged against Min-jun's car, adrenaline draining away. You okay? Min-jun asked, hovering but not touching, giving her space. I am, Lydia said, and realized it was true. He can't hurt me anymore. He's just pathetic now, and I'm free. Min-jun smiled, and it was genuine, warm, nothing calculated about it. Yes, you are. 2 months later, the SEC formally charged Ethan with securities fraud. His company dissolved, his assets were frozen, and he was facing serious prison time. Nina had left him the moment the charges were filed, taking what money she could and disappearing. The investors who'd lost money were being compensated through the asset seizure. Lydia's community center was nearing completion. It was beautiful, everything she'd envisioned and more. The neighborhood had embraced it, and she'd been offered 3 more projects off the back of it. She was rebuilding her career, her life, herself, and Min-jun had become something she hadn't expected. A friend. Maybe more than a friend, but they were taking it slow, learning each other without the pressure of their original arrangement, without the shadow of Ethan hanging over them. 3 months is almost up, Min-jun said one evening, sitting in her new apartment, small but hers, in a building she'd chosen, decorated the way she wanted. It is, Lydia agreed. So what happens now? Min-jun asked. Do we go back to being strangers? Lydia thought about the night in the rain when he'd caught her. Thought about everything that had happened since, the revenge, the justice, the rediscovery of herself. Thought about this man who'd offered her a weapon and then stepped back to let her decide how to use it. I don't think we were ever really strangers, she said. And I don't want to go back to anything. I want to go forward. If you want that too. I do, Min-jun said. But I need you to know, I'm not a good man, Lydia. I do things that cross lines. I always will. No, Lydia said. And I'm not looking for a good man. I'm looking for an honest one, someone who sees me as an equal, someone who doesn't try to make my choices for me. She smiled. Someone who catches me when I fall but doesn't keep me from standing on my own. I can do that, Min-jun said softly. Lydia crossed the room and kissed him again. Not tentative this time, but sure, certain. This was her choice, her decision, her life. And it was exactly what she wanted. If this story of revenge, redemption, and finding yourself again resonated with you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what part spoke to you most. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay broken. Because sometimes the best revenge is becoming the person you were always meant to be.